What's happening? Slick! What's going on? Slick! Treason! Betrayal! An imperator! Immortan Joe! He looked at me! He looked right at me! He looked at your blood man!
A warrant can die before the people inside it realize they are already ghosts. That is the brutal engine of Mad Max Fury Road, not just a post-apocalyptic action film, not just a chase movie, not just a 2-hour explosion of engines, dust, metal, flame and madness. This is a film about survival after everything meaningful has been burned away. It is about bodies turned into machines, fate turned into control, water turned into power, and hope becoming something dangerous enough to start a war. Welcome back to the Film Box, where we do not just watch a film and move on, we slow it down, we look under the hood. We open the frame, the sound, the silence, the choices, the hidden emotions, and the strange little details that most people miss the first time. Because every film is a box, we open it together. And today we are opening one of the loudest, strangest, most visually aggressive boxes modern action cinema has ever given us: Mad Max Fury Road. Released in 2015 and directed by George Miller, here is what makes this film so fascinating. On the surface, it looks simple. A group of people drive across a desert while another group of people chase them. That is almost the entire shape of the movie: forward, pursuit, escape, turn around, fight back. But underneath that simple shape, there is a much deeper story working: a story about freedom, a story about ownership, a story about trauma, a story about people who have been reduced to tools trying to become human again. And that is why Fury Road hits harder than a normal action film. It does not waste time explaining its world with long speeches. It throws you into it. It trusts you to feel the rules before you understand them. You see the cracked earth, the starving crowds, the pain warriors, the mechanical religion, the prison like fortress, the bodies treated like property, and immediately you understand one thing: this world is not just broken, it has been redesigned by cruelty. Max enters this world like a man who has already lost too much of himself. He is not introduced as a clean hero. He is hunted, captured, branded, used, and dragged through the chaos like another damaged object in a wasteland full of damaged objects. But the film is clever because even though his name is on the title, the emotional center slowly shifts. The story opens wider, and suddenly you realize this is not only Max's road. It is Furiosa's road too, maybe even more than his. That is the first beautiful trick of the film. It uses speed to hide depth. It uses noise to hide pain. It uses action to reveal character instead of pausing the story to explain character. Every turn of the wheel tells you something. Every glance matters. Every desperate decision carries history behind it. These people do not have time to explain their wounds. They are too busy surviving them. And that gives the film a special kind of tension. You are not just watching vehicles crash. You are watching beliefs clash. You are watching a system built on fear begin to crack. You are watching people who were told they were objects slowly remember they have names, choices, bodies, futures, and souls. That is why this breakdown needs to go deeper than just what happened in the movie. Because Fury Road is not powerful only because it has incredible stunts. It is powerful because the stunts mean something. The movement means something. The desert means something. The engines mean something. Even the silence between explosions feels loaded, like the world itself is holding its breath. So, in this film box breakdown, we are going to take it layer by layer. We will talk about why this film feels so different from most action movies. We will look at the production story behind it, because the making of Fury Road is almost as intense as the movie itself. We will open up the characters, especially Max and Furiosa, and look at why their partnership works even though they barely trust each other at first. We will break down the visual language, the editing rhythm, the color, the sound, the strange myth like world building, and the emotional weight hiding inside all that chaos. And yes, later when we reach the spoiler section, we will go fully into the ending, the turning point, the hidden symbols, and the deeper meaning behind that final climb toward freedom. But for now, before we open the whole box, just sit with the feeling of this film. Dust everywhere, engines screaming, a man running from ghosts, a woman driving toward a memory, a group of trapped souls chasing a place that may not even exist anymore. Behind them, an empire of metal and control. In front of them, a desert that gives no promises. That is the road, and once the film starts moving, it almost never lets you breathe. But the genius is that beneath all the speed, Mad Max, Fury Road is asking a very human question. When the world has taken everything from you, what part of you is still worth saving? That is where we begin. The strangest thing about Mad Max Fury Road is that it feels like a film that should not work as well as it does. Think about it for a second. The story is almost aggressively simple. A vehicle leaves one place. An army follows it. The road becomes a battlefield. That is the skeleton. That is the visible shape. If you describe it too quickly, it sounds like a feature-length chase sequence stretched across the desert. And yet, when you actually sit with the film, it does not feel thin, it feels massive, mythic, almost ancient. That is the hook. How does a movie with such a simple forward motion feel like it contains an entire civilization collapsing on screen? Most action films try to hook you by adding more plot, more twists, more speeches, more backstory, more characters explaining what happened before the story began. Fury Road does the opposite. It strips everything down until only the essentials remain: hunger, water, power, escape, fear, memory, guilt, hope, the need to keep moving. And because the film removes so much explanation, every image becomes heavier. A steering wheel is not just a steering wheel, it is a symbol of control. A mask is not just costume design, it is a sign of weakness being hidden behind power. A convoy is not just a collection of vehicles, it is a moving prison, a moving religion, a moving war machine. Even the desert is not just empty space. It is the film's biggest character because it does not care who survives. Here is what most people miss when they remember Fury Road as only a wild action movie. The action is not decoration. The action is the language. The film speaks through movement. When a character chooses to turn a wheel, speed up, slow down, look back, refuse, protect, or risk everything, that is the dialogue. That is the confession. That is the emotional truth. And that is why the film grabs you so quickly. It does not ask you to sit patiently while it explains the rules. It drops you into a world where the rules have already destroyed people. Before you fully understand who controls what, you feel the pressure. Before you know the names, you understand the power structure. Before the characters tell you what they have lost, you can see loss written into their bodies, their clothes, their machines, and the way they move through space. The film's hook is not just will they survive the chase, that would be too small. The real hook is can anyone still become human in a world that has turned humanity into fuel? That question is under everything. Max is haunted before the story even really opens. Furiosa is focused with the intensity of someone carrying a secret too heavy to speak out loud. The people trapped inside this world are not just trying to escape a place, they are trying to escape an idea. The idea that power gets to decide what a person is worth. The idea that bodies can be owned. The idea that fear is stronger than memory. The idea that the future belongs only to those brutal enough to take it. That is why the film feels so urgent. Every second has weight because the road is not just a location, it is a test of instinct, a test of trust, a test of whether broken people can recognize the brokenness in each other and still choose something better. And what makes the hook even sharper is the way Fury Road refuses to make heroism clean. Nobody here looks untouched. Nobody walks into this story glowing with moral certainty. Max is damaged. Furiosa is carrying pain and purpose at the same time. The people seeking freedom are frightened, brave, uncertain, and human. Even survival itself is messy. Sometimes survival makes people selfish. Sometimes it makes them cruel. Sometimes it makes them silent. But sometimes, if the right moment arrives, survivor turns into resistance. That is where the film becomes more than spectacle. Because spectacle alone fades. A big crash can impress you once. A massive explosion can wake you up for a few seconds, but a film stays with you when the image means something after the noise is gone. Fury Road understands that perfectly. It gives you insane visual force, but behind that force, it keeps pushing one emotional question. What would you risk for freedom if you had been taught that freedom no longer exists? That question gives the chase its soul. And look closer at the design of the film's central conflict. It is not good people versus bad people in a simple cartoon way. It is life versus a system that feeds on life. It is movement versus control. It is memory versus propaganda. It is the possibility of a future against the machinery of a dead world that keeps pretending it is immortal. That is why Immortan Joe feels so disturbing even before you understand every detail about him. He is not frightening only because he commands warriors. is frightening because he has turned desperation into belief. He has built a society where people are not just controlled physically but spiritually. They are made to think suffering has meaning if it serves him. They are made to mistake obedience for glory. And against that, the film gives us something almost fragile, people trying to live, not conquer, not rule, not become legends, just live. That simple desire becomes enormous because the world around them is designed to make living impossible. And the more the road stretches forward, the more the film makes you feel that escape is not only about distance. You can drive hundreds of miles and still carry the prison inside you. You can run from a monster and still have to face what the monster did to your mind. That is the emotional trap beneath the action. So when Fury Road begins, the hook is not simply the speed. It is the promise that this road is going somewhere deeper than the horizon. It is telling you that every engine roar, every desperate look, every risky choice, and every violent collision is part of a bigger question about power, survival, and the cost of becoming free. And once you understand that, the movie changes. It stops being a chase. It becomes a rebellion in motion. Before the story even begins, Mad Max Fury Road has one of those production histories that changes how you watch every frame. This does not feel like a film casually assembled around a normal screenplay because it was not built in a normal way. According to production accounts, George Miller developed the film with an unusually visual process, using 1,465 storyboards and 3,454 panels with artist Mark Sexton, then working through them with different departments to figure out how each moment could actually be shot. That matters because when you watch Fury Road, you can feel that the movie was imagined as motion before it was imagined as explanation. The images are not there to decorate the script. The images are the script. The way a vehicle enters the frame, the way Max is dragged through space, the way Furiosa holds the wheel like she is holding her last piece of control. All of that feels planned with the precision of a silent film and the force of a nightmare. It is not random chaos. It is organized impact. And that is important because a normal dialogue heavy action film might pause and tell you what each faction believes. Fury Road does not do that. It lets you understand the world by looking. The citadel is vertical, so power feels high above the suffering. The war rig is massive, so escape feels heavy and difficult. The war boys move like members of a ritual, so the violence feels religious before anyone explains the belief system. That storyboard first approach helps explain why the film can move so fast and still remain readable. Your eye is always being guided. Even when everything is exploding, the frame usually tells you exactly where to look. Another production fact that changes the way you see the film is the location story. Fury Road was originally tied to Australia, but production was postponed after heavy rains around Broken Hill turned the dry landscape into meadows of wild flowers, which did not match the wasteland George Miller needed. Principal photography then began in Namibia in 2012 with additional filming in parts of Australia. That detail is almost poetic. A film about a dead world had to leave a blooming desert because nature came back too beautifully. Think about that. The real world accidentally produced the opposite image of the movie's emotional universe. So when the film finally gives us those huge Namibian spaces, the emptiness is not just pretty background. It becomes part of the film's argument. The land looks endless, but it does not feel free. It feels exposed. There is nowhere to hide. There is no softness. There is no shelter. The horizon keeps promising escape, but the desert keeps swallowing distance. And because so much of the movie is about people trying to find a lost green place, knowing that the original desert became too alive makes the finished film hit differently. The wasteland is not just a fantasy of destruction, it is a deliberately chosen absence. The film needed a world where life felt rare, controlled, and almost mythical. That makes every drop of water feel political. It makes every seed feel sacred. It makes every memory of greenery feel like a prayer. Then there is the practical filmmaking. According to Wired, Miller wanted the film to feel rooted in physical reality, using old school in camera methods wherever possible, while still relying on modern safety rigs, digital cameras, and wire removal to make the impossible survivable. This is one of the biggest reasons Fury Road still feels so intense. Your brain can sense weight, it can sense real dust, it can sense a vehicle actually moving across open land. Even when visual effects are helping the image, the foundation often feels physical. That is why the action has a different texture from action scenes that feel entirely weightless. When a truck shifts, when a body swings, when a bike launches, when the warwick batters forward, the film gives you the feeling of mass. Not cartoon mass, real mass, dangerous mass. And here is where it gets layered. Practical action is not automatically better just because it is practical. What matters is why the film uses it. Fury Road uses physical stunt work because the entire story is about bodies trapped inside systems of machinery. The people are not separate from the vehicles. They are attached to them, carried by them, sacrificed to them, worshipping them, escaping through them. So if the vehicles felt fake, the world would lose its religion. The machines need to feel like metal gods moving through dust. That is why the practical texture matters emotionally, not just technical. Production designer Colin Gibson is another key part of this box. Architectural Digest reported that Gibson began working on the film years before filming, when there was no traditional script, but thousands of storyboards and a mapped out action backbone. His team eventually used salvaged parts from 350 cars to build detailed vehicles, creating 88 distinct vehicle characters and about 150 vehicles overall because doubles and stunt versions were needed. That detail changes how you see every vehicle in the film. These are not just cars with spikes glued onto them, they feel like biographies on wheels. Each machine tells you who built it, what that person feared, what that faction valued, and what kind of world forced beauty and brutality to merge. The Warwick is not just transportation, it is Furiosa's moving fortress, her secret escape route, and her burden. The doof wagon is absurd on the surface, but it also tells you something terrifying. Even war has become performance. Even violence needs a soundtrack in this culture. Gibson's design philosophy gives the film its strange credibility. The vehicles look ridiculous and completely believable at the same time. That is a hard balance. Too realistic, and the film loses its mythic madness. Too exaggerated, and the emotional reality collapses. But Fury Road finds the middle. Everything feels overbuilt, desperate, repurposed, and symbolic. It looks like people built their identities out of whatever the old world left behind. The fifth production layer is the human pressure behind the camera. The shoot was famously demanding, and later accounts describe tension between Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron during filming. George Miller later framed part of that tension as a clash between very different performers, while also connecting it to the way Max and Furiosa have to learn cooperation inside the story. This is not something to romanticize. A difficult set is not automatically noble, and tension between actors should never be treated like a necessary ingredient for good art. But analytically, it does affect how we read the finished performance. Max and Furiosa begin the movie with distrust. They are both guarded. They do not soften easily. Their alliance is not warm at first, it is practical, suspicious, and forced by danger. So when you watch their early scenes, the emotional distance feels sharp because the characters are not pretending to be comfortable with each other. And that discomfort is central to the film. Fury Road is not about instant friendship. It is about trust being built under pressure. It is about two damaged people learning, almost against their instincts, that survival alone is not enough. Max does not become meaningful because he dominates the story. Furiosa does not become powerful because the film pauses to praise her. Their power comes from action, choice, and gradually earned recognition. They begin as people using each other to survive. They slowly become people willing to risk themselves for something beyond survival. So when you put these production facts together, the film becomes even more impressive. It was planned like a moving graphic novel. It was reshaped by real weather and real geography. It used physical stunts and modern tools together instead of choosing only one. It built vehicles as characters, not props. And it carried real human strain behind performances that were already about strain, distrust, and survival. That is why Fury Road feels so alive. It does not feel like a clean digital product. It feels carved, burned, bolted together, dragged across the desert, and forced into existence. You can sense the difficulty inside the image. You can sense the planning behind the madness. You can sense a director returning to a world he created decades earlier, not to repeat the past, but to ask what the wasteland would look like after cinema itself had changed. And maybe that is the biggest behind the lens truth of all. Mad Max Fury Road works because the making of it mirrors the story of it. A group of people took an impossible machine into the desert and tried to keep it moving. Every department had to trust the next one. Every stunt had to serve the road. Every design choice had to carry meaning at high speed. The result is a film that feels less like it was simply produced and more like it was survived. Now let's open this properly. Mad Max Fury Road is a 2015 post-apocalyptic action film directed by George Miller, starring Tom Hardy as Max Rokatansky, Charlize Theron as Imperator Furiosa, Nicholas Hoult as Nux, Hugh Keys Byrne as Immortan Joe, and a supporting cast that turns this wasteland into something between a nightmare, a myth, and a fever dream. But calling it just an action film almost feels too small. Yes, it has engines. Yes, it has battles on wheels. Yes, it has some of the most controlled chaos ever put on screen. But at its heart, this is a survival story about people trying to escape a world where survival itself has been corrupted. It is not about saving civilization in the clean, heroic way a normal blockbuster might flame it. Civilization is already gone. The old world is not coming back. What remains is a brutal question. When everything has collapsed, who gets to control what is left? That is why the film exists. The Mad Max series has always been about a man wandering through broken societies, but Fury Road pushes that idea into a much more intense, emotional, and visual form. The wasteland is no longer just a damaged future. It is a complete system. It has religion, it has economy, it has hierarchy, it has language, it has symbols, it has rituals, it has myths that keep people obedient. That is what makes this world so frightening. It is not empty, it is organized. And a cruel world that is organized is often more dangerous than a world that is only chaotic. Max enters that world as someone who has almost stopped belonging to himself. He is haunted by memories, haunted by strangers, and treated like another resource to be used. The film does not ask you to admire him instantly. It presents him as damaged, defensive, and half feral. He is alive, but he is not whole. He moves like a person who has learned that attachment is dangerous because everything he attaches to eventually disappears. Then the film gives us Furiosa, and this is where the box becomes more interesting. Furiosa is not written like a side character waiting for the title character to validate her. She arrives with purpose already burning inside her. She has a mission before Max understands it. She has a history the film does not over explain. She has pain, discipline, guilt, and hope all moving beneath the controlled surface. She does not need long speeches to feel important. She feels important because every decision she makes changes the direction of the story. That balance between Max and Furiosa is one of the reasons Fury Road feels so fresh. The film does not reduce either of them into a simple hero. Max is not a shining savior. Furiosa is not a flawless symbol. They are both broken in different ways. They both understand survival, but they do not understand trust easily. Their relationship becomes powerful because it is not built from romance, charm, or easy friendship. It is built from pressure, from necessity, from recognition, from the slow realization that another person's fight might also be your fight. At the genre level, this is post apocalyptic action, but the emotional genre underneath is rescue, escape, and moral awakening. The film asks what freedom means when the body has been controlled, when memory has been poisoned, when hope sounds almost foolish, and when the safest thing might be to stop caring. That is what separates it from a basic chase film. The chase is physical, but the meaning is spiritual. Look closer at the title too. Fury Road, not Peace Road, not Freewood, Fury. The word matters. This is a road built from rage, but the film is not simply celebrating anger. It is asking what anger can become. Anger can destroy. Anger can blind. Anger can serve a tyrant. But anger can also be the first sign that something inside you still knows you are not meant to live as property, fuel, or decoration. That is emotional pressure running underneath the spectacle. The inspiration of the film comes partly from the long history of the Mad Max world. But Fury Road does not require you to be a franchise expert. That is important. You can walk into this film with only a basic understanding that Max is a survivor in a collapsed world, and the movie will still work. It does not depend on nostalgia. It does not slow itself down to explain every past event. Instead, it uses the older mythology as dust in the air. You feel that Max has a past, but the story is focused on the immediate crisis in front of him, and honestly, that is the best way to experience it. Because this film is not trying to invite you into a clean encyclopedia of lore, it wants to throw you into a living nightmare and make you learn by instinct. You understand the citadel because of how people reach upward for water. You understand Immortan Joe because of how people fear him, worship him, and depend on him. You understand Furiosa because of how intensely she thrives. You understand Max because of how badly he wants to disappear, even when the story keeps forcing him to care. So, spoiler free, here is the verdict before we go deeper. Mad Max Fury Road is one of the most impressive action films of its era, not because it has the most complicated plot, but because it understands cinematic momentum better than almost anything around it. It is lean, strange, loud, beautiful, ugly, emotional, and relentless. It is the kind of film where every frame feels designed to hit you before you have time to defend yourself, but it is not for everyone. If you need dialogue heavy storytelling, calm pacing, long explanations, or a traditional emotional setup, this movie might feel too aggressive. It throws you into the storm and trusts you to hold on. But if you love visual storytelling, practical feeling action, mythic world building, symbolic design, and stories where the emotion is carried through movement instead of speeches, then Fury Road is absolutely worth opening. Because this is not just a movie about people running from danger, it is a movie about the moment running away is no longer enough. At some point, the road itself has to become a choice. The first time Mad Max Fury Road hits you, it does not feel like a movie politely inviting you in. It feels like being thrown into a furnace with views. There is no gentle doorway, no calm explanation, no comfortable scene where someone sits down and tells you the history of the world, the names of the factions, the rules of survival, or the emotional map you are supposed to follow. The film opens like the apocalypse has already been running for years and you are late to the disaster. The wall is broken before you arrive. Max is broken before you meet him. The land is already dry, the people are already desperate, and the ghosts are already speaking. That opening feeling is important because it tells you exactly what kind of film this is going to be. Fury Road is not interested in holding your hand. It wants you alert. It wants you uncomfortable. It wants you to feel the speed of survival before you understand the meaning of survival. I walked in expecting a wild desert action movie, but the film gave me something stranger. It gave me a nightmare that moved like a machine. A world where every person seemed shaped by damage, every object looked stolen from a dead civilization, and every frame felt like it had been left out in the sun until it cracked. And the opening minutes hook you because Max does not feel safe, heroic, or in control. That is the first surprise. In many action films, the lead character enters with authority. The camera tells you this is the person who understands the world. But here, Max is introduced as someone being hunted by his own mind before anyone even catches him physically. His memories interrupt him. His guilt follows him. His survival instincts are sharp, but they do not make him free. That changes the emotional temperature of the film. You are not watching a hero step into danger. You are watching a survivor who has already been living inside danger for so long that danger has become normal. He eats quickly. He runs quickly. He reacts before he explains. He does not seem like someone with a plan. He seems like someone with habits built from trauma, and that makes the opening feel unstable in the best way. Then the film pulls you into the citadel, and the world suddenly becomes bigger, stranger, and more disturbing. This is where the first watch feeling becomes almost overwhelming. You see a society built vertically, with power at the top and desperation below. You see people reaching for water like it is salvation itself. You see bodies treated as resources. You see warriors who have turned self destruction into belief. You see machinery mixed with religion, medical need mixed with exploitation, and leadership mixed with theater. And the film does not pause to say, here is what this means. It trusts the image. That trust is one of the reasons the first 10 minutes are so hard to look away from. You are constantly decoding. Your eyes are working. Your brain is catching up. You are asking questions without the movie directly asking them for you. Who controls this place? Why are these people so pale? Why do they worship engines? Why is water being rationed like a weapon? Why does Max seem less like a man and more like an animal trying not to be caged? That sense of discovery creates a very specific kind of tension, not confusion exactly, more like immersion. You may not understand every piece yet, but you feel the logic of the world. You feel that it has rules, ugly rules, cruel rules, rules built from scarcity and fear. And then Furiosa enters the film with a different energy. Max is chaos and damage. Furiosa is control and purpose. She does not need to announce that she matters. The way the camera treats her tells you. The way she moves tells you. The way she watches, calculates, and carries silence tells you. From the first moments around her, you get the sense that she knows something the rest of the world does not. She is not simply doing the job. She is carrying a secret plan inside a system that would destroy her if it knew. That is when the film becomes impossible to look away from. Because suddenly the story is not just about Max surviving capture, it is about a machine beginning to malfunction from the inside. Furiosa is part of Immortan Joe's structure, but she is also the crack in that structure. She knows the routes, she knows the vehicles, she knows how the system thinks. And because she knows it, she can betray it with precision. That creates the first major emotional hook, the feeling that someone inside the cage has found a way to turn the cage into a weapon. And the atmosphere on that hook is incredible. The world feels sunburned and sick. The colors are harsh and unnatural, but not careless. The orange desert feels hot enough to erase memory. The blue night feels almost dreamlike, like the world is briefly cooling down but never healing. The engines do not just sound loud, they sound hungry. The music does not simply support the action. It feels like the pulse of a civilization that has confused violence with faith. On a first watch, what really stands out is how physical everything feels. The dust feels like it is in your throat. The metal feels heavy. The chase does not feel weightless or keen. It feels dangerous, messy, and exhausting. Even when the film becomes visually beautiful, it never lets the beauty become comfortable. The beauty is aggressive. The beauty has sharp edges. And that is a strange achievement, because many action movies want you to enjoy destruction from a distance. Fury Road makes destruction feel immediate, but it also keeps asking you to think about why this world became so obsessed with destruction in the first place. The spectacle is exciting, but there is sadness under it. These people are not fighting inside a healthy world, they are fighting inside the ruins of one. That is why the first watch feels both thrilling and heavy. You are entertained absolutely, but you are also surrounded by decay. You are watching people race through a landscape that feels like a punishment. You are watching a society that has turned basic human needs into systems of control. You are watching characters who do not have the luxury of calm emotional conversations because every second of delay could cost them everything. And still, somehow, hope appears. Not soft hope, not gentle hope, not the kind of hope that arrives with sunlight and music and easy promises. This film's hope is rough. It is hidden under grease, dust, fear, and risk. It looks like a stolen route. It looks like a loaded truck. It looks like a woman refusing to keep serving a monster. It looks like strangers who might become allies if they can survive long enough to trust each other. That is what hooked me in the first 10 minutes. The film creates a world so brutal that any act of escape feels revolutionary. It makes movement feel meaningful. It makes the road feel like a question. It makes you understand that going forward is not just geography. Going forward is defiance. And once that feeling locks in, Fury Road becomes more than a movie you watch. It becomes a ride you survive. The filmmaking of Mad Max Fury Road is built around one simple rule: chaos must feel wild, but it must never become unreadable. That is harder than it sounds. A lot of action films confuse speed with intensity. They shake the camera, cut too fast, bury the geography, and hope the noise will convince you that something exciting is happening. Fury Road moves fast, but it rarely loses control of your eye. Even when vehicles are crashing, bodies are swinging, dust is following the frame, and the music is pushing everything forward, you usually know where the danger is, where the characters are, and what each decision means. That is the first technical miracle of the film. The camera often centers the most important visual information, especially during action. Faces, vehicles, weapons, obstacles, and turns are frequently placed near the middle of the frame, so your eyes do not have to search widely after every cut. This gives the editing a strange smoothness. The movie can cut quickly because the visual target stays clear. Your eye is already in the right place before the next shot hits. And that matters emotionally. Because if the action becomes unreadable, the danger becomes abstract. You stop feeling character choices and start feeling only noise. But in Fury Road, the action remains tied to intention. When Furiosa shifts strategy, you feel it. When Max notices an opening, you follow it. When the war rig is threatened from a specific side, you understand the pressure. The film is not just showing motion, it is showing decisions at high speed. The camera movement also serves the story. It is aggressive but not empty. The lens often feels attached to the machinery of the world. It pushes with the vehicles. It charges with the chase. It sometimes holds low and close, making the machines feel huge, almost animal. At other times, it pulls wide and lets the desert swallow everyone, reminding you how small these people are against the wasteland. That shift between close pressure and vast emptiness gives the film its rhythm. One second you are trapped inside metal and dust. The next, you are staring at a horizon that feels endless and hopeless. That contrast is essential to the film's emotion, because Fury Road is not only about speed, it is about direction. The camera gives turning movement into meaning. Forward means escape, backward means confrontation. Side attacks mean the past and the system trying to drag the characters off course. The road is not just where the story happens. The road is the film's visual sentence, and every camera move adds punctuation. The color grading is another huge part of the experience. The film does not chase realism in a flat way, it pushes color into myth. The desert oranges are intense, almost burned into your eyes. The sky can feel impossibly blue. The night scenes are not simply dark. They often carry a cold, unreal, bluish quality that makes the world feel like a dream after the heat of the day. This is not naturalism. This is emotional color, and that is why it works. The orange world feels harsh, violent, and dry. It makes the wasteland feel like a place where softness cannot survive. The blue night gives you a different kind of danger, more ghostly and uncertain. When the palette shifts, your body feels the shift before your mind names it. Heat becomes exhaustion. Blue becomes fear and temporary relief. Red and flame become ritual aggression and sacrifice. The colors are not just pretty, they tell you what kind of pressure the characters are under. Lighting also plays a major role in making the film feel like myth instead of plain realism. Faces are often carved by harsh light, dust, and shadow. Characters look weathered by the world they live in. Furiosa's face, with grease across her forehead, becomes almost iconic because the lighting and makeup turn her into both a soldier and a survivor. Max often looks half buried in dirt, blood, and memory, as if the wasteland has physically written itself onto him. Immortan Joe, hidden behind armor and breathing apparatus, feels less like a normal man and more like a constructed image of power. That is important. In this film, design and lighting do not simply decorate character, they reveal character. The production design is maybe the clearest example. The citadel rises vertically, which immediately tells you how power works. Those above control water, those below wait for mercy. The war rig is massive, armored, practical, and almost sacred to the story because it carries both danger and hope. The vehicles are personalized, like moving identities. They are not clean machines from a factory. They are built from leftovers, obsession, fear, and belief. Every wheel, spike, engine, chain, and skull like detail says something about the people who made it. This is world building without lectures. The editing rhythm is also extremely controlled. The film often cuts with the force of a drum beat, but it knows when to let a moment breathe. It is relentless, yes, but not monotonous. It builds waves, chase, impact, pause, pursuit, problem, solution, silence, then eruption. That rhythm keeps the film from becoming one long flat roar. You feel exhaustion, but you also feel escalation. The film understands that action only becomes powerful when it has shape. And listen to how sound works here. The engines are not background, they are voices. Some roar with authority, some scream with instability, some feel heavy and industrial. The sound design gives personality to the machines, making the wasteland feel alive through metal. The music pushes the story like a war chant, but the film also knows the power of stripping sound back. When the noise drops even briefly, the silence feels dangerous. It lets you feel the cost of the chaos. This is where Fury Road becomes especially smart. The film is loud, but it is not careless with loudness. It uses sound to build belief. The war boys live in a culture where engines, drums, flame, and spectacle become spiritual fuel. So the soundscape does not only excite you, it helps explain how this society thinks. War is performance, violence is ceremony, noise is control. The framing of bodies matters too. The film often shows people trapped, attached, restrained, lifted, chained, or fused with machines. Mass begins as a body used by others, the wives are treated as possessions by the system they flee. The war boys treat their own bodies as disposable instruments of glory. Furiosa's missing arm is never treated as weakness. Instead, the film frames her physical difference as part of her lived reality, her discipline, and her adaptation. The body in this film is always political. Who controls it? Who uses it? Who protects it? Who gets to reclaim it? That question is hidden inside the visuals again and again. And maybe the most impressive technical choice is restraint. That sounds strange for a film this explosive, but it is true. Fury Road does not overload the story with unnecessary locations, speeches, or side plots. The filmmaking stays focused on motion, pursuit, and transformation. The techniques all serve that focus. Camera, color, editing, sound design, and movement are all lopped onto the same emotional engine, the fight to turn escape into freedom. That is why the film feels so complete. It is not great because it has one impressive technical element. It is great because every technical element seems to understand the same thing. The camera understands the road, the color understands the heat, the editing understands panic, the sound understands machinery, the production design understands power, and the performances understand that in this world, sometimes the smallest glance can carry more emotional weight than a full speech. Look closer at this scene, any scene, and you will see it. The film is always telling you where to look, what to feel, and why the movement matters. That is real cinematic control. Not quiet control, furious control. The story begins with Max alone in the wasteland, and the first thing the film wants you to understand is that loneliness has not made him peaceful. It has made him hunted. He is physically alive, but mentally surrounded. The past follows him like dust that never settles. The memories of people he could not say break through his mind in flashes, and that is important because Max is not presented as someone looking for a mission. He is not searching for justice. He is not trying to become a hero again. He is simply trying to keep moving, because stopping means feeling everything he has buried. Then the wasteland catches him. The war boys capture him and drag him into the citadel, where we finally see the nightmare society that has grown out of the ruins. Immortan Joe rules from above, controlling water bodies, belief, and survival itself. The people below are desperate for even a brief release of water, and the way Joe gives it to them tells you everything about his power. He does not simply own resources, he controls the rhythm of hope. He gives just enough to be worshipped, never enough to set anyone free. Max, meanwhile, is reduced to a resource. That is one of the film's sharpest early choices. The title character is not introduced as powerful inside this world. He is used, branded, caged, turned into a supply system for someone else. His body becomes part of the machinery of the Citadel, and that immediately connects him to the film's bigger theme. In this world, power survives by turning people into functions. Some people become workers, some become symbols, some become weapons, some become property, some become fuel. Then Furiosa enters the story and the movie quietly shifts. She is introduced as someone trusted by the system, at least enough to drive the Warwick on an important supply run. On the surface, she appears to be doing her assigned role. She is disciplined, focused, and fully embedded inside the machinery of Immortan Joe's empire. But here is where the film plans its first major turn. Furiosa is not obeying, she is escaping. And she is not escaping alone. Hidden inside the Warwick are Joe's wives, young women who have been treated as possessions and symbols of his future. Furiosa's mission is not just rebellion for herself, it is rescue. It is an attempt to take people who are trapped inside the most private part of Joe's power and move them beyond his reach. That choice changes everything. Because Joe's world is built on control and Furiosa's betrayal attacks that control at its most personal level. She does not steal a weapon first. She steals the future Joe believes he owns. That is why his reaction is so intense. It is not just military anger, it is wounded ownership. He sees their escape as an insult to his authority, his legacy, and his entire mythology. So the chase begins, and from this point, the film becomes movement with meaning. Furiosa drives the Warwick away from the expected route, and the citadel awakens behind her like a beast. Joe gathers his forces, and the pursuit turns the desert into a moving battlefield. The war boys charge after her with religious excitement, convinced that dying for Joe will turn them into legends. That belief is terrifying because it shows how deeply the system has shaped them. They are not only afraid of Joe, many of them want to be used by him. Knox is the clearest example of that. At first, he seems like another wild believer, desperate to prove himself and earn glory. He brings Max along because Max is still connected to him as a living blood supply, which turns the early connection into something almost absurd and disturbing at the same time. Max is not his partner. Max is equipment. Again, the film keeps returning to the same idea. The wasteland has found ways to make people forget that other people are human. But chaos creates cracks. As the chase intensifies, Max breaks loose from the role forced onto him. He is chained, masked, desperate, and still operating almost entirely on instinct. When he finally crosses paths with Furiosa and the wives away from the Citadel's immediate control, the film gives us one of its most important confrontations. No one trusts anyone. Max sees resources and escape. Furiosa sees danger and the possible threat to her mission. The wives see another violent man from the world they are trying to flee. The scene works because it refuses easy bonding. Max does not instantly become noble. Furiosa does not instantly welcome him. They fight because each side has good reason to fear the other. In a healthier world, they might speak first. In this world, survival speaks before language. Every move is defensive, every glance is calculation. And yet, beneath the conflict, the film is already building the possibility of alliance because both Max and Furiosa understand something the others do not. If they remain divided, Joe wins. That is where the war rig becomes the center of the story. It is more than a truck. It is shelter, weapon, burden, and promise. Whoever controls it controls the chance of escape. Furiosa knows it intimately. Max wants to use it. The wives need it. Joe wants it back because what it carries threatens his entire image of invincibility. So every attack on the rig feels like an attack on the fragile possibility of freedom. As the pursuit continues, the film keeps expanding the world without stopping to lecture. We see other factions, other machines, other forms of wasteland survival. The Kenyan deal with the bikers shows that Furiosa had planned this escape carefully. She is not improvising from pure emotion. She has a route, a bargain, and a destination, the green place, a remembered home where she believes the wives can be safe. That goal is crucial because it gives the film its emotional horizon. The green place is more than a location. It is the idea that the world was not always like this. It is memory as resistance. Furiosa remembers something different, and that memory gives her the strength to reject what exists now. For the wives, the dream place becomes a dream of bodily freedom and safety. For Max, at first, it is not really his dream at all. He is still trying to separate himself from other people's hopes, because hope has hurt him before. But the road keeps forcing him to choose. During the chase, Max gradually stops thinking only like a lone survivor, not all at once. That would be too simple. He changes through action. He helps because helping becomes necessary. Then he keeps helping because something in him begins to respond to what Furiosa is fighting for. His transformation is subtle, and that is why it works. The film never turns him into a speech making savior, it lets him rediscover humanity through practical sacrifice. Furiosa, meanwhile, keeps carrying the emotional weight of the mission. She is not just driving away from Joe, she is driving toward a past she believes can still save them. That belief gives her strength. But it also sets up the film's cruelest emotional turn. When the group finally reaches the people connected to Furiosa's past, the dream breaks. The green place is gone. This is the moment where the film stops being only an escape story and becomes something deeper. Furiosa has spent the whole journey aiming for a remembered sanctuary, only to discover that the world has already consumed it. The place she carried inside her mind, the place that gave meaning to the risk, no longer exists in the way she needed it to exist. That realization hits because it is not just disappointment. It is grief. It is the collapse of a future she had been using to survive. And look closer at what that means. The film is saying that sometimes freedom cannot be found by returning to the past. Sometimes the place you dream about is real only as memory. Sometimes survival requires admitting that the rescue you imagined is impossible and then choosing a new kind of courage anyway. Furiosa's reaction to that loss is one of the emotional centers of the movie. She has been controlled and contained for so long, but in that moment, all the discipline cracks. Not because she is weak, but because she has been strong for too long while carrying a hope that just died in her hands. The group then faces a choice: keep driving into the unknown across wasteland that may offer nothing, or reconsider everything. And this is where Max becomes essential in a new way. He begins to understand that endless escape may be another kind of trap. The road forward might only lead to more emptiness. The citadel, the place they fled, is still horrible, but it contains water, food, and a population trapped under Joe's control. If Joe and his army are out chasing them, then the heart of his power may be vulnerable. The answer may not be to run farther. The answer may be to go back and take the source of control away from him. This is the film's great structural reversal. The first half is escape, the second half is return, and that turn gives the story its real power, because running away was necessary, but it was not enough. Freedom cannot only be distance from the tyrant. Freedom has to become the destruction of the tyrant system. Furiosa wanted to save a few people by reaching a safe place. Marx's insight helps transform that mission into something larger. Save the people by reclaiming the place that was stolen from them. So they turn around. That choice is simple, but emotionally huge. It means driving straight back into the danger they barely survived. It means facing Joe directly. It means accepting that the road to freedom may require returning to the cage, not as prisoners, but as the ones who finally break it open. The final chase becomes a collision of every major idea in the film. Max chooses connection over isolation. Furiosa chooses to fight not just for escape, but for liberation. The wives move from protected cargo into active participants in their own survival. Nux, who began as a believer in Joe's violent mythology, starts to see another way to matter. His arc is especially important because he is not simply defeated, he is redirected. He begins the film wanting to die for a lie, and by the end, he discovers the possibility of giving himself for something human. The pursuit grows more desperate. Joel's forces close in. The war rig becomes more damaged. Bodies are exhausted. Choices become faster and more final. But because the film has built all this through action, the climax does not feel like empty noise. Every risk has emotional meaning. Every person who helps matters because the story has taught you what help costs in this world. Furiosa's confrontation with Joker is the weight of everything she has endured and everything he represents. It is not just personal revenge, it is the collapse of an image. Joe's power depends on being seen as untouchable, almost divine. When that image is broken, his empire begins to break with it. The return to the citadel then becomes one of the film's most powerful movements. The people below see that the ruler who controlled their water, their fear, and their belief is gone. The escaped women are no longer hidden property. Furiosa is no longer simply an instrument of someone else's rule. Max, who could have vanished again, has helped carry this change into being. And yet, the film does not end by turning Max into the king of the new world. That is important. He does not stay to claim credit. He does not turn liberation into personal ownership. He shares a final recognition with Furiosa, then disappears back into the crowd, back into the wasteland, back into the unresolved road of his own life. That ending tells us who Max is in this story. He is not the destination, he is the witness, the helper, the broken man who briefly becomes part of someone else's salvation and through that recovers a piece of himself. Furiosa rises. The people rise. The water returns to those who were denied it, and the film leaves us with the feeling that the world is not healed, not fully, not easily, but something has cracked open. A system that looked permanent has fallen. A road that began as escape has become revolution. And this is the moment the box opens completely. What Mad Max Fury Road does brilliantly is that it makes every creative choice feel like it has been welded to the same engine. Nothing feels separate. The acting, the story structure, the direction, the visuals, the music, the sound, the production design, the themes, everything is moving in one direction. That is rare. A lot of films have great moments. Fury Road has a great system. It knows what it is from the first frame and it keeps tightening that identity until the final image. Start with the acting because this is where the film does something very difficult. The performances are not built around long dramatic speeches. They are built around pressure, movement, eye contact, silence, and physical decision making. That means the actors have to communicate inner life without being given the usual tools. Charlize Theron commands the screen as Furiosa because she makes restraint feel emotional. She does not overplay pain. She does not turn every scene into a performance of suffering. Instead, she carries history in the body. The way she grips the wheel, the way she scans danger, the way she controls her breathing, the way she looks at the wives like their survival is not just a mission but a death. All of that tells us who she is before the film gives us much explanation. And one specific scene proves it completely. When Furiosa learns that the green place is gone, that moment works because it breaks the control we have seen from her. Until then, Furiosa has been disciplined in human form. She is practical. She is focused. She cannot afford emotional collapse because people depend on her. But when the dream dies, the mask finally cracks. The pain is not loud because the movie wants melodrama. It is loud because she has been holding back an entire life. That scene makes you feel the difference between strength and numbness. Furiosa is strong, but she is not numb, and that distinction is everything. Tom Hardy's Max also works because the performance understands that Max is not supposed to dominate every scene with charisma. He is guarded, damaged, and reactive. His early behavior is almost animal like, but not because the film wants to make him simple. It is because trauma has reduced his world to threat assessment. He watches exits. He calculates advantage. He speaks only when speech becomes useful. Then, slowly, almost quietly, he starts making choices that are not only about himself. That slow shift is one of the best parts of the film. Max does not become heroic through a speech. He becomes heroic by staying when leaving would be easier. He becomes heroic by offering a plan. He becomes heroic by giving Furiosa trust. At the exact moment, trust matters. In a film full of giant machines, his arc is built from small human turns. That is why it lands. Nicholas Holt's Nux is another performance that works better than people might expect on a first watch. At the beginning, he could have been only comic intensity, a strange side character representing the war boy's fanaticism. But the film gives him a real emotional path. He begins as someone desperate to be witnessed by the system that has consumed him. He wants meaning, but he has been taught to find it in the wrong place. His transformation matters because it shows that even someone shaped by a cruel belief system can still be reached by kindness, failure, and human connection. Story construction is the next major strength. The film is incredibly simple on the surface but structurally elegant underneath. It uses a clean chase format, then flips it halfway through. First, the characters flee from the citadel, then they return to it. That reversal gives the story shape without needing a complicated plot maze. The film understands that the strongest structure is not always the busiest one. Sometimes the strongest structure is the one that makes the emotional journey impossible to miss. Escape becomes return. Survival becomes responsibility. Running becomes revolution. That is clean storytelling. And because the structure is so focused, every character decision has room to matter. Furiosa's original goal is personal and protective. Get the wives to safety. Max's original goal is personal and defensive. Survive and get away. The wives want freedom from ownership. Knox wants glory inside Joe's system. By the end, all those goals have changed. Furiosa's mission becomes liberation. Max chooses connection. The wives become part of the fight. Knox rejects the lie that once defined him. The story is simple enough for the character transformations to stay visible. Direction and visuals are where George Miller's control becomes almost unbelievable. The film looks exceptional not because every frame is beautiful in a clean way, but because every frame has force. The world is ugly, but the filmmaking is gorgeous. That contrast gives the movie its strange power. You are looking at decay, exploitation, and desperation, but the image is composed with such intensity that the wasteland feels mythic. The action is also directed with rare clarity. The geography usually makes sense. You know where the war rig is, you know where the attackers are coming from, you know who is in danger and why. That clarity lets the film build suspense out of decisions instead of confusion. When a character climbs, jumps, reloads, turns, or risks Kazarja, you understand the stakes immediately. This is the moment the film changes everything about modern action expectations. It proves that action can be visually extreme and still readable. It proves that speed does not require visual chaos. It proves that a blockbuster can be loud without being empty. The production design also works brilliantly because the world feels discovered, not invented for convenience. The citadel, the war boys, the war rig, the religious language, the vehicle culture, the costumes, the scars, the masks, the tools, the symbols, all of it feels like it grew from scarcity. Nothing looks fresh. Everything looks repaired, stolen, repurposed, worshipped, or abused. That gives the film a lived in texture. You believe this world because even its most absurd details feel connected to need. Music and sound are just as essential. Junkie XL's score does not simply sit under the action. It drives the film forward like another engine. The percussion feels industrial. The brass and strings can feel almost alarm like, pushing panic through the scene. But the sound design is just as important as the score. Engines roar with personality. Metal screams. Dust storms swallow sound. Silence arrives rarely, but when it does, it feels enormous. The soundscape makes the wasteland feel alive and sick at the same time, and then there is the unforgettable scene. For me, the one scene that completely defines the film is not just the final confrontation or the first major chase. It is the moment after Furiosa learns the green place is gone and Max later returns with the idea to go back. That combination is unforgettable because it reveals the film's deepest intelligence. The story does not reward blind hope. The dream destination is dead, the safe place is gone, but the film also does not sink into hopelessness. It asks a harder question. When the place you were chasing no longer exists, can you build freedom from the place you escaped? That is the emotional turn that makes Fury Road more than spectacle. The film works because it understands that hope is not always found ahead of you. Sometimes hope is behind you, trapped under the control of someone who never deserved it. Sometimes the answer is not to keep running toward a fantasy. Sometimes the answer is to turn around and take back what made the fantasy necessary in the first place. That is why Fury Road remains so powerful. It gives you action that feels physical, performances that feel carved from silence, visuals that feel mythic, sound that shakes the bones, and a story simple enough to become universal. It is not just about reaching freedom, it is about realizing freedom may have to be fought for at the source. As powerful as Mad Max Fury Road is, the film is not flawless. And the interesting thing is that most of its weaknesses come from the same choices that make it so strong. The film is lean, fast, visual, and almost allergic to over explanation. That gives it incredible momentum. But it also means some emotional areas are left thinner than they could have been. The movie trusts image and movement so much that, for some viewers, a few characters and relationships may feel more symbolic than fully explored. The first issue is Max himself. This sounds strange because Max works very well inside the movie. Tom Hardy plays him with physical intensity, and the film uses him smartly as a damaged survivor moving through someone else's rebellion. But if you came into this expecting Max to be the clear emotional center, the film may feel slightly distant from him. His trauma is visible but not deeply unpacked. His memories appear in flashes, and they explain his haunted state, but they do not always feel as emotionally specific as they could. That does not ruin the film. In fact, the mystery around Max is part of his identity. He is supposed to feel like a man who has been reduced to instinct. But it does create a small gap. We understand that he's haunted. We understand that Dil follows him. We understand that he has feared people in the past. But the emotional texture of that guilt sometimes feels more like atmosphere than character development. The film gives Furiosa the stronger dramatic engine, and honestly, that is one of its best choices. But because Max is still the title character, there is a slight imbalance. The movie is called Mad Max, but the story's emotional center often belongs to Furiosa. For many people, that is exactly what makes the film fresh. For others, it may feel like Max is more of a supporting force in his own franchise entry. The second weakness is the wives. Conceptually, they are essential. They represent escape from ownership, the rejection of Immortan Joe's private control, and the possibility of a future outside his system. Their presence gives Furiosa's mission urgency. But as individual characters, they are not all equally developed. Some have clearer personalities than others, but the film often treats them as a group first and individual second. This matters because the movie's politics and emotional stakes depend heavily on their freedom. We care about them because the situation is horrifying and because Furiosa cares about them. But the film could have gone a little deeper into their internal differences. How does each one understand escape? Who is most afraid? Who is most angry? Who doubts the plan? Who still carries pieces of the system inside her mind? The film touches some of this, but it does not fully open each person. Again, the reason is understandable. The movie is built like a chase. It cannot stop for long conversations without damaging its engine. But this is where the storytelling trade off becomes visible. The film gains speed and loses some intimacy. The third flaw is that the world building, while visually brilliant, can feel almost too dense for a first watch. Fury Road throws language, rituals, factions, vehicles, symbols, diseases, beliefs, and power structures at you with very little direct explanation. For viewers who love visual decoding, that is exciting. For viewers who need firmer narrative grounding, it can feel overwhelming. This is not a plot hole, it is a style choice. But style choices still affect accessibility. The film asks you to learn its word while it is already racing past you. That can make the opening feel thrilling, but also slightly disorienting. Some details become clearer on rewatch, which is a strength for long term appreciation, but a potential weakness for immediate emotional clarity. The fourth issue is the villain. Immortan Joe is visually unforgettable. His design, his breathing apparatus, his body armor, his control of water, his cult like command over the war boys, all of it works. As a symbol of patriarchal control, resource tyranny, and false divinity, he is extremely effective. But as a person, he remains mostly symbolic. We do not get much psychological depth from him beyond ownership, obsession, fear of losing control, and hunger for legacy. Now, to be fair, that may be the point. Joe is not meant to be charming or complex in a way that softens him. He is the face of a system. But because the film is so thematically rich, a slightly deeper look at how he built this belief structure could have made the world even sharper. We see the result of his rule clearly. We feel its cruelty. But we do not fully explore the machinery of his rise. The fifth weakness is emotional breathing room. Fury Road has pauses, but they are brief and often still tense. That works for momentum, but it can make the film feel exhausting. Some viewers may admire it more than they emotionally relax into it. The movie is so committed to forward motion that tenderness has to arrive in tiny fragments: a glance, a touch, a decision, a shared silence. That is beautiful when it works, but it also means the film rarely allows the full emotional weight of its relationships to settle for long. And finally, the simplicity of the plot can be a limitation depending on what you want from cinema. The structure is elegant, but it is not intricate. The film is not built around mystery, layered subplots, or complex political maneuvering. It is built around pursuit and reversal. That makes it pure and powerful, but also narrow. If you are not swept into the visual rhythm, the story may feel repetitive: drive, attack, survive, continue, turn back, attack again. For me, these flaws do not seriously damage the experience. They are real, but they mostly come from the film's chosen form. Fury Road sacrifices some character depth, exposition, and softness in order to become one of the most focused action films of its time. The trade off is clear. You lose some intimacy, but you gain momentum. You lose some explanation, but you gain myth. You lose some traditional drama, but you gain pure cinematic force. So, where does it fall short? It falls short in the spaces between the explosions, where a few characters could have been more fully opened. But it almost makes that limitation feel intentional, because this is a world where people rarely get the time to explain themselves. They can only move, and in Fury Road, movement is survival. To understand what Mad Max Fury Road does differently, you have to place it beside other films that also imagine collapse, survival, and the pressure of a broken world. The most obvious comparison is Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. That film is part of the same bloodline, and you can feel the shared DNA immediately: the desert, the fuel obsession, the lonely drifter, the violent road tribes. The idea that civilization has been replaced by movement, machinery, and desperation. The Road Warrior helped define the visual language that so many post apocalyptic films copied afterward: leather, dust, modified vehicles, federal communities, and a hero who arrives like a myth instead of a normal person. But Fury Road does not simply repeat that formula, it intensifies it. The Road Warrior feels like a wasteland legend told around a fire. Fury Road feels like that legend strapped to an engine and launched into a sandstorm. The older film has more of a classic frontier structure, with Max entering a community, helping them survive, and then moving on. Fury Road compresses that idea into almost pure motion. The community is not a settlement waiting to be defended. The community is inside the war rig, moving, vulnerable, unfinished, and trying to become free before it is destroyed. That is the difference. The Road Warrior is about protecting a fragile pocket of survival. Fury Road is about creating one while already being chased. Another strong comparison is Children of Men. On the surface, the films look very different. One is a dusty vehicular action myth, the other is a grounded dystopian thriller. But underneath, both are about a dying world where the future has become almost impossible to imagine. In Children of Men, hope is tied to birth and the possibility that humanity is not finished. In Fury Road, hope is tied to escape, seeds, water, and bodies being reclaimed from a system of ownership. Both films understand that when the future disappears, people become easier to control. That is what makes them powerful. But where Children of Men beats dread through realism, long takes, and political collapse, Fury Road beats dread through myth, design, speed, and ritual. One feels like tomorrow if everything keeps getting worse. The other feels like tomorrow after tomorrow has already burned. If you loved Fury Road for its deeper themes, Children of Men is a perfect next watch. It is slower, heavier, and more grounded, but it shares that same ache, the feeling of people trying to protect hope in a world that has almost forgotten what hope is. Then there is Snowpiercer. Again, the setting is completely different, but the structure connects. Snowpiercer is about class, power, and survival compressed into a moving machine. The train is society. Each section reveals who gets comfort, who gets crushed, and who benefits from pretending the system is natural. Fury Road does something similar with the Citadel and the convoy. The machines are not just transportation, they are political spaces. The difference is that Snowpiercer moves forward through compartments almost like climbing through a social diagram. Fury Road moves across open land, but the openness is deceptive. The desert looks free, yet everyone is still trapped by power, scarcity, and pursuit. Snowpiercer says that the prison is the machine. Fury Road says the prison can follow you even into empty space. That is why Fury Road feels less intellectual on the surface but more physical in the body. You feel its politics through thirst, heat, speed, and exhaustion. You do not just understand the system, you feel chased by it. A fourth comparison is Dread, especially in how both films use a simple plot structure to create intense cinematic focus. Dread is basically a contained ascent through a violent tower. Fury Road is basically a chase across the wasteland. Both films understand that simplicity can be a strength when the world, style, and tension are strong enough. Neither film needs a maze of subplots to work. They lock into one clean movement and squeeze everything they can out of it. But Fury Road is more emotionally mythic. Dread is brutal, stylish, and contained, but it stays colder. Fury Road has more spiritual weight because its action is tied to liberation, trauma, memory, and the possibility of rebuilding life. It is not just about surviving one mission, it is about breaking the belief that the world must remain cruel forever. So, what does Fury Road do that others in its genre often do not? It makes action feel symbolic without slowing the action down. That is rare. Many films can be exciting. Many films can be thematic. Fewer can make a chase scene feel like a thesis about power, freedom, gender, faith, and survival while still working as pure adrenaline. Fury Road does that. It hides the deeper layer inside the movement, so you feel the meaning before you analyze it. Where does it fall short by comparison? Compared to Children of Men, it is less emotionally intimate in the traditional dramatic sense. Compared to Snowpiercer, it spends less time directly exploring the mechanics of its social system. Compared to The Road Warrior, some may feel it gives Mads less central mythic dominance. Compared to Dread, it is less cleanly contained and more overwhelming. But those are not failures exactly. They are the cost of the film's chosen form. If you love Fury Road, watch The Road Warrior to see where this wasteland language became iconic. Watch Children of Men if you want another story about hope surviving inside collapse. Watch Snowpiercer if the power structure and resource politics interested you. Watch Dread if you want another stripped down action film that proves simplicity can hit hard. But if you did not connect with Fury Road and the constant motion felt exhausting, then the road might work better for you as a quieter post apocalyptic story. Or Children of Men might give you the same desperation with more emotional stillness. Because Fury Road is not trying to be the most complicated dystopian film, it is trying to be the most alive. And compared to almost everything around it, it succeeds because the film does not just show a broken world, it makes the broken world move. When Mad Max Fury Road arrived in 2015, it felt like it had come from the past and the future at the same time. That is a strange combination, but it is exactly why the film hit so hard. The Mad Max name already carried old cinematic weight. The original films helped shape the visual language of the post apocalyptic wasteland decades earlier. But by 2015, action cinema had changed. Superhero universes were dominating multiplexes. Big franchises were becoming more interconnected, more polished, more dependent on mythology, branding, and digital scale. So when Fury Road arrived, it did not feel like just another franchise revival, it felt like a challenge. It was saying action cinema does not have to be weightless. It can be physical. It can be strange. It can be simple and still layered. It can move like a stunt show, look like a nightmare painting, and still carry a real emotional argument. That was the cultural shock of the film. It reminded people that a blockbuster could be massive without feeling factory made, and the timing mattered. In 2015, Hollywood was full of legacy returns. Studios were looking backward, reviving old names, rebuilding familiar brands, trying to turn nostalgia into modern profit. Fury Road could have easily become another empty comeback. Instead, it did something braver. It used the old world of Mad Max not as a museum but as a living engine. It did not ask you to clap because you remembered the franchise. It forced you to care because the filmmaking itself was alive. Critics responded intensely. The film holds a 97% tomato score on Rotten Tomatoes from hundreds of critic reviews, while the audience score is lower but still strong at 86%, showing that critics were even more ecstatic than general viewers. That gap makes sense. Critics often responded to the craftsmanship, the visual storytelling, the disciplined chaos, and the way George Miller reimagined action drama. Some regular viewers loved the ride immediately, but others found it too loud, too weird, too thin in plot, or too exhausting. That divide is important because it reveals what kind of film this is. Fury Road is not a comfort blockbuster. It is not built to give everyone the same clean emotional path. It is abrasive. It is overwhelming. It trusts image more than explanation. It puts you inside a world where almost everything looks diseased, desperate, or mechanical. For some people, that is cinematic heaven. For others, it feels like too much dust and not enough traditional story. But over time, the critical argument won much of the room. The film became not only a successful action movie but a reference point. When people talked about practical feeling stunts, readable action, visual storytelling, and female agency inside blockbuster cinema, Fury Road kept coming up. It became one of those films filmmakers and film lovers point to when they want to explain the difference between noise and momentum. The box office story is interesting too. The film was not a small art house miracle. It played globally and earned about $380.4 million worldwide, with around $554.3 million from the United States and Canada and about $226.1 million internationally. That is a major number, but because the film was expensive and had a long, difficult production path, its theatrical success was more complicated than the reputation might suggest. It was admired, talked about, and awarded, but it was not the kind of easy billion-dollar franchise machine Hollywood often dreams about. That makes its legacy even more fascinating. Fury Road did not become important only because it made money. It became important because people kept returning to it as proof of what cinema could still do when action was treated as art, not just product. Its reputation grew around craft, not just commercial dominance. And then award season turned that respect into history. At the 80th Academy Awards, Mad Max Fury Road won 6 Oscars, including film editing, production design, costume design, makeup and hairstyling, sound makeup and hairstyling, sound mixing. It also competed in major categories including Best Picture and Best Director. That is extremely important because action films are often praised by fans and then pushed into only technical corners by major awards bodies. Fury Road did win heavily in technical categories, but the Best Picture and Best Director nominations signal something bigger. The industry recognized the whole machine, not just the explosions. Still, you can argue it was overlooked in certain ways. George Miller losing Best Director to Alejandro G. Iñárritu for The Revenant makes sense in the context of that year's awards conversation. But many film lovers still argue Miller deserved the win because directing Fury Road meant controlling performance, stunt coordination, geography, editing logic, world building, and visual rhythm at an almost impossible scale. The film won where its craft was undeniable, but its larger directorial achievement remains one of those debates that has only grown louder with time. Its cultural conversation also had another layer: feminism in action cinema. Furiosa became a major figure almost instantly, not because the film stopped to announce her importance, but because she carried the moral center of the story. The film's escape narrative, its rejection of ownership, and its focus on women reclaiming agency became a major part of the discussion. Evansler, who was consulted on the film, discussed its feminist themes around the time of release, and that conversation helped frame Fury Road as more than a masculine wasteland spectacle. But the debate was not one sided. Some critics praised its gender politics, while others questioned whether the film went far enough, especially around race representation and the limitations of its genre roots. That tension matters because it shows the film was not just consumed passively. People argued with it, they used it to talk about what mainstream action could do, what it still avoided, and how far a Hollywood blockbuster could really push its own politics. That is usually a sign of a film with cultural weight. Its streaming and home viewing life strengthen the reputation even more. Fury Road is the kind of film that many people first experienced as pure sensory overload, then later rewatched with more attention to design, structure, and theme. On a second or third watch, the simplicity starts to look less simple. You notice how clean the structure is. You notice how much character work is happening through glances and movement. You notice how every vehicle, scar, mask, and ritual is doing world building. Does it feel timeless or perfectly of its era? The answer is both. It is of its era because it arrived during a franchise heavy decade and stood out by being a franchise film that felt handmade, risky, and artist driven. But it also feels timeless because its deeper fears are not locked to 2015. Scarcity, ecological collapse, authoritarian control, bodily freedom, propaganda, worship of power, and the hunger for a livable future, these ideas have not faded. If anything, they feel sharper now. And that is why Mad Max Fury Road still matters. It arrived as a chase movie. It stayed as a warning, a rebellion, and a reminder that action cinema can still have a soul. The fan theories around Mad Max Fury Road are interesting because this is exactly the kind of film that creates them. It gives you a world that feels huge, but it only shows you the pieces needed for the immediate story. It gives you symbols, rituals, scars, machines, and half explained histories, then it keeps moving before you can fully inspect them. That leaves space. And when a film leaves space with this much texture, people naturally start filling the gaps. One of the biggest theories is that Max may not function as one strict, realistic character across the entire franchise. Some fans read him almost like a wasteland myth, a repeated legend of a broken road warrior who appears whenever a community is at the edge of destruction. This theory grew partly because the Mad Max timeline has always been flexible, and later discussions around Furiosa again pointed out that Fury Road serves as both a continuation and a kind of spiritual reboot. Does that theory hold up? Emotionally, yes. Literally, maybe not. The film itself does not really say Max is only a myth. He has a body, wounds, fear, memory, and direct impact on the plot. But the way he enters and exits the story does support the mythic reading. He appears from the wasteland, helps a group escape destruction, refuses to claim power, and disappears into the crowd. That is not normal hero behavior. That is legend behavior. So even if he is real inside the story, the film frames him like a story people might retell later. Another popular theory is that the marks in Fury Road might not be the exact same marks from the earlier films. Some fans connect this to timeline questions, age inconsistencies, and even the idea that he could be a different wastelander carrying the name or role of Max. Fan discussions and theory articles have debated this for years, especially because the franchise is not perfectly locked to clean continuity. Here is where the theory becomes tricky. It is fun, and it explains some continuity problems, but it is not necessary for the film to work. Fury Road does not need you to solve Max like a puzzle. Max is more powerful when he is treated as a haunted survivor first and a timeline problem second. If the theory makes the movie feel richer for you, it fits the mythic tone. But if you need the simplest reading, the film still works perfectly as Max Rokatansky moving through another wasteland story. Then there is the theory around the green place. Some fans debate how a fertile place could have remained hidden for so long, especially after Furiosa showed more of that location and made its geography feel closer to other major wasteland powers than some viewers expected. Lady discussions have questioned whether Immortan Joe, Dementor's traders, or scouts should have discovered it earlier. This theory is interesting because it touches a real world-building pressure point. The green place is powerful as a symbol, but symbols can become complicated when the franchise later expands the map. In Fury Road, the green place works almost like a memory of Eden, beautiful, lost, and unreachable. But once later stories show more details, fans naturally ask practical questions. Who knew about it? How far was it? Why was it not conquered sooner? The theory that holds up best is not that the green place was impossible to find. It is that the wasteland is chaotic, information is unreliable, travel is dangerous, and powerful men may not understand what they cannot immediately control. A hidden place can survive not because it is magically invisible, but because distance, fear, bad maps, secrecy, and arrogance protect it for a while. Another debate surrounds the Vivellini and the social structure of the green place. Some fan discussions focus on whether men lived there, how children were raised, and whether later lore about the green place changes how we read the many mothers in Fury Road. That theory matters because it asks whether the green place was meant to be a perfect paradise or simply a better world than the Citadel, and I think the second reading is stronger. The film does not need the green place to be flawless. It needs it to represent a memory of abundance, community, and care that stands against Joe's world of ownership and control. If the green place also had difficult rules, that does not destroy the theme. It makes the world more human. No society in the wasteland is pure. Some are simply less cruel. Then there is Nox. Fans have sometimes asked whether Nox truly dies at the end, because the film cuts through the chaos so quickly, and because beloved redemption arcs often invite denial. Older fan discussions have even raised the possibility that maybe we do not clearly see enough to be absolutely certain, but this one emotionally falls apart. The film frames Nux's ending as sacrifice. His arc begins with him wanting a glorious death for a false god, and it ends with him choosing a meaningful death for real people. Bringing him back would weaken that transformation. His final act matters because he finally understands what he is giving himself for. He stops performing belief and starts protecting life. The last big theory is that the entire wasteland after the first film could be happening inside Max's broken mind. Some fan theory pieces have explored the idea that the franchise's increasing madness reflects Max's psychological collapse rather than a literal world. It is a clever idea, but for Fury Road, I do not think it is the strongest reading. The film is too concerned with systems outside Max, the Citadel, the wives, Furiosa's past, the war boys, water control, and collective survival. If everything is only Max's imagination, Furiosa's story loses too much independence. And Fury Road is too generous to Furiosa to reduce her into a symbol inside Max's head. So the best fan theories are not the ones that solve the movie. They are the ones that reveal how mythic the movie already is. Because Fury Road does not feel like a close file. It feels like a legend still gathering dust on the road. Beneath the engines, beneath the dust, beneath the crashes and the screaming metal, Mad Max Fury Road is really about one thing: the fight to remain human in a world that keeps trying to turn people into objects. That is the deeper layer. Every major part of this film comes back to that idea. Max is turned into a blood source. The wives are treated like property. The war boys are trained to think of their bodies as disposable tools. The people below the citadel are reduced to thirsty mouths waiting for mercy. Even Furiosa, powerful as she is, has been shaped into a function inside Joe's war machine. Everyone has been given a use. Almost no one has been allowed a full self. And that is what makes the film hurt under the spectacle. The wasteland is not only dangerous because there is no water, no law, and no stable civilization. It is dangerous because cruelty has become normal. People have adapted to it. They have built language around it. They have built religion around it. They have built religion around it. They have built machines around it. The horror is not only that the old world ended. The horror is that the new world learned how to survive by making people smaller. That is why water matters so much. Water is life, but in the citadel, water is power. Joe controls the flow, so he controls hope. He does not just keep people thirsty, he teaches them to depend on his generosity. That is a very human kind of control, and it reaches beyond the wasteland. The film is showing how any system becomes dangerous when basic needs are controlled by someone who wants worship in return. Food, water, safety, belonging, purpose. When those things are rationed by power, people can be trained to accept almost anything. The war boys show us another side of that control. They are not simply soldiers. They are young men who have been given a story about what their suffering means. They are sick, fragile, and disposable, but the system tells them they are glorious. It gives them a dream big enough to hide how badly they are being used. That is one of the film's sharpest ideas. Exploitation becomes stronger when it convinces the exploited that their pain is sacred. Nux begins inside that lie. He wants meaning. That is what makes him tragic. He is not empty. He is not just violent for no reason. He wants to matter. He wants to be seen. He wants his short, painful life to connect to something larger than fear. Joe's world gives him an answer, but the answer is false. It says he matters only if he destroys himself for the machine. His art becomes powerful because he slowly learns that meaning does not have to come from being consumed by power. Meaning can come from protecting someone, listening, changing, choosing life, even at the cost of yourself. Furiosa's deeper meaning is different. She represents the pain of someone who escaped internally before she could escape physically. Long before the war rig leaves the citadel, her spirit has already rejected Joe's world. She has been living inside the system while refusing to belong to it. That is a hard form of survival. It means hiding your true self. It means performing obedience while planning rebellion. It means carrying memory like a secret weapon. Her memory of the Blink place matters because memory is resistance. Joe's word wants people to believe that his reality is the only reality. The Citadel wants to feel permanent. The war boys want their mythology to feel eternal. But Furiosa remembers something else. She remembers land, community, mothers, growth, and a life not built around ownership. Even if that memory is incomplete, even if the green place is gone, the memory keeps a different possibility alive inside her. That is why losing the green place is so devastating. It is not just the loss of a destination, it is the loss of the emotional proof she has carried for years. She believed there was a place untouched by Joe's sickness. When she learns that place has been destroyed, the film asks an extremely painful question. What do you do when the future you survive for no longer exists? The answer is not simple optimism. The answer is transformation. The film says that hope cannot only be nostalgia. You cannot rebuild your life by trying to crawl back into the exact version of the past you lost. Sometimes a safe place is gone. Sometimes the person you were before the damage is gone too. But that does not mean freedom is impossible. It means freedom has to become active. It has to become something you create, not something you find. That is the meaning of turning back. The return to the citadel is not just a clever plot reversal. It is the film's deepest emotional statement. Furiosa spends most of the movie trying to reach a remembered paradise, but the real solution is to transform the place of oppression into a place of possibility. That is powerful because it speaks to something people actually feel in life. Sometimes you cannot outrun the source of your pain forever. Sometimes healing requires going back to the thing that control you and changing your relationship to it. Not because the past becomes safe, because you are no longer willing to let it own the future. Max's role in this deeper layer is also important. He is a man haunted by people he could not save. His instinct is isolation because connection has become dangerous to him. But isolation has not healed him, it has only kept him alive. That is the difference the film understands so well. Survival is not the same as healing. Max has survived for a long time, but he is still trapped inside memory. He runs from ghosts, yet carries them everywhere. By helping Furiosa, he does not magically fix himself. The film is smarter than that, but he does recover one piece of humanity, the ability to choose connection again. He cannot save the people he lost, but he can save the people in front of him. That is not a complete cure, it is a step, and in this world, a step toward humanity matters. The recurring images support this deeper meaning beautifully. Chains show bodies controlled, masks show power hiding weakness, steering wheels show who gets direction, seeds show the future in its smallest possible form, water shows life turned into politics. The desert shows what happens when the world has been stripped down to need. The warwick shows escape carrying risk. The citadel shows power rising above the people it feeds on. And Furiosa's missing arm is one of the film's strongest visual details because the movie never frames her as incomplete. She is not powerful despite damage in a shallow, inspirational way. She is powerful because she has adapted, endured, and built herself around survival without letting survival erase her moral center. Her body carries history, but it does not reduce her to history. That is the deeper truth of Fury Road. The film is not saying the world can be easily healed. It is not naive. It knows damage remains. It knows systems leave scars. It knows freedom is terrifying when you have lived too long inside control. But it also says that people are not only what was done to them, they are also what they choose once a door opens. That is why the ending feels hopeful, without feeling clean. The water flows, but the wasteland still exists. Joe is gone, but rebuilding will be difficult. Furiosa rises, but she carries everything that happened. Max disappears, but not as the same man who entered. Nothing is perfectly solved, but something essential has changed. People who were treated like objects have become agents of history. And in a dead world, that is almost a miracle. The legacy of Mad Max Fury Road is strange because it did not simply continue a franchise, it revived a cinematic language. Before this film, the Mad Max world was already influential. The earlier movies had shaped decades of post apocalyptic imagery. The desert roads, the scavenged machines, the leather, the tribes, the idea of civilization collapsing into speed and survival. But Fury Road did something different. It took that old language and proved it could still feel modern, dangerous, and artistically alive. That is why its influence goes beyond the Mad Max series itself. After Fury Road, people talked differently about action scenes. The conversation shifted back toward clarity, physicality, and visual geography. The film reminded everyone that action is not just movement, action is storytelling through movement. A chase is not powerful because vehicles are going fast. It is powerful when every turn, crash, sacrifice, and glance changes what the characters mean to each other. That idea became part of its legacy. You can feel its shadow in the way modern action fans discuss practical stunts, centered framing, visible geography, and real physical weight. It became a reference point whenever a blockbuster looked too weightless or too digitally smooth. People would point back to Fury Road and say, "This is what impact feels like. This is what it means when metal has weight. This is what it means when editing creates rhythm instead of confusion." And the film earned that respect because it was not only technically impressive, it was emotionally focused. The Academy recognized that craft in a major way. At the 88th Academy Awards, Mad Max Fury Road won 6 Oscars, including film editing, production design, costume design, makeup and hairstyling, sound wedging, and sound mixing, while also being nominated for Best Picture and Best Director. That matters because action films are often treated as entertainment first and cinema second. Fury Road made that division look foolish. It showed that action can be design, rhythm, performance, politics, sound, and emotion all at once. Its influence on the franchise is even clearer. Without Fury Road, there is no modern Furiosa conversation at this scale. The character became so central to the film's reputation that the franchise later returned to her backstory in Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, a prequel that expands her origins and shows how deeply her myth had taken root after the 2015 film. That is a major legacy point. Furiosa was not just a strong supporting presence, she became one of the defining action characters of the decade. And she changed expectations. The film proved that a legacy franchise could shift emotional focus without weakening itself. Max did not have to dominate every beat for the film to feel like Mad Max. The wasteland was bigger than him. That choice opened the franchise. It suggested that this world could hold many legends, many wounds, and many roots. Max could still matter, but he did not have to own every story. That is a powerful evolution for a series built around one iconic wanderer. The film also influenced how people think about world building. Fury Road does not build its world like a manual. It builds it like archaeology. You look at a mask, a vehicle, a ritual, a tattoo, a phrase, a scar, and you infer the civilization behind it. That approach has become one of the film's most praised qualities. It trusts the viewer to connect pieces. It does not explain every corner of the wasteland because the mystery is part of the texture. That is why the world feels alive. A weaker film might have paused to tell you how every faction works. Fury Road lets you feel that the world existed before the camera arrived and will keep existing after Max walks away. That kind of implied history is difficult to create, and it is one reason the film is still studied, rewatched, and argued over. Its reputation has grown, not shrunk. At release, some people admired it as a great action spectacle. Over time, it became something larger, one of the defining action films of the 2010s, a film that critics, filmmakers, and fans kept using as a standard. The fact that it still feels intense years later says a lot. Many blockbusters age quickly because their spectacle depends on novelty. Fury Road ages differently because its spectacle is connected to structure and theme. The action still works because the meaning still works, and that meaning is painfully durable. Ecological collapse, resource control, false religion, gendered power, the exploitation of young bodies, the transformation of survival into ideology, the search for a livable future. These ideas have not become less relevant. If anything, the film's world feels more unsettling now because its exaggerations are built from real fears. That is the mark of lasting science fiction and dystopian cinema. It does not predict the future in a literal way. It turns present anxieties into images so extreme that we finally notice them. So, what does it mean for film history that Mad Max Fury Road exists? It means action cinema has one less excuse. After this film, it became harder to say that big action cannot be elegant, harder to say that simple plots cannot carry big ideas, harder to say that visual storytelling is less sophisticated than dialogue heavy storytelling, harder to say that a franchise revival has to be safe, nostalgic, or hollow. Fury Road proved that a film can be a sequel, a reboot, a chase movie, a feminist escape story, a technical showcase, a myth, and a warning, all without stopping the engine. Its legacy is not just that other films copied its dust, its vehicles, or its orange blue intensity. Its real legacy is that it reminded cinema what motion can mean, not movement for distraction, movement for survival, movement for rebellion, movement as the moment a dead world realizes something alive is still trying to get away. Alright, full spoilers from this point. If you haven't seen the film yet, close this now, go watch it, and come back when you're ready. Trust me, you'll want to experience it fresh. The biggest twist in Mad Max Fury Road is not that Furiosa betrays Immortan Joe. The film reveals that fairly early. The real twist is that escape is not enough. At first, the story seems to be shaped like a straight line. Furiosa takes the war rig away from the citadel, hides Joe's wives inside it, and aims for the green place, the home she was taken from as a child. Max gets pulled into the journey by force, then slowly becomes part of it. Joe and his army chase them across the desert. The goal feels clear. Keep driving until the tyrant is too far behind to matter. But the film is quietly setting up the painful truth that distance cannot automatically create freedom. That is why the green place reveal is so important. Furiosa has carried this memory like a map inside her soul. She believes there is still somewhere untouched by Joe, somewhere with life, water, seeds, mothers, and safety. For the wives, that dream becomes a future. For Furiosa, it is more personal. It is not just where she wants to go. It is where she was stolen from. Returning there means proving that the wasteland did not erase everything. Then she learns it is gone, not hidden, not waiting. Not wounded, but recoverable in the way she imagined, gone. And this is where the film becomes devastating. Furiosa's scream is not only grief for a place, it is grief for the version of herself that survived by believing that place still existed. Every mile she drove, every risk she took, every second she stayed alive inside Joe's system was tied to the hope that one day she could return. When that hope collapses, the film forces her to face a harsher question. If the safe place is dead, what does freedom mean now? The first answer is despair. Keep going. Drive deeper into the wasteland. Maybe there is something beyond the salt. Maybe there is nothing. But moving forward has become instinct. And for a moment, that instinct almost wins. Then Max has the idea that changes the whole film. Instead of driving farther into emptiness, they should turn back. Joe has taken most of his forces away from the citadel to chase them. The place they escaped from may now be vulnerable. The citadel has water, crops, people, and a structure that could be transformed if Joe is removed. So the path to freedom is not ahead, it is behind them. That is the real structural twist. The movie is not a straight line, it is a circle with a changed meaning. The first trip away from the citadel is escape. The trip back is revolution. This matters because it changes what Furiosa's mission becomes. At the beginning, she wants to save a small group from Joe's control. That is already brave. But by the end, the mission becomes larger. It is not only about getting the wives out, it is about breaking the system that made their imprisonment possible. That is why going back carries so much emotional force. They are no longer only fugitives, they are people choosing to attack the source of the cage. Max's role in this turn is also deeper than it first appears. He is haunted by people he failed to save, and the film shows those memories as sudden interruptions, like guilt still trying to speak through him. For most of this story, Max tries to survive without attachment because attachment has become painful. But by choosing to return with Furiosa, he chooses responsibility again. He cannot fix his past, but he can act in the present. That is the quiet healing inside his arc. He does not become whole. The film is too honest for that. But he becomes useful in a human way, not as a weapon, not as a resource, not as someone else's blood supply. He becomes a person choosing to help another person. Knox's twist is one of the film's most emotionally underrated pieces. He begins as a war boy who wants approval from Immortan Joe. He believes his suffering has a glorious purpose. He has been taught that dying for Joe will give him meaning, and that belief is tragic because you can see how badly he wants his life to matter. But after failure, humiliation, and unexpected kindness, his faith starts to crack. The wives do not treat him only as a tool. Capable especially sees the wounded person beneath the fanatic. That does not erase what he has done or believed, but it opens a door. For the first time, Nux experiences connection outside Joe's mythology. By the end, when he sacrifices himself, the meaning is completely transformed. Earlier, he wanted to throw himself away for a lie. At the end, he gives himself to protect real people. That difference is everything. The act may look similar on the surface, but spiritually it is the opposite. Joe's system wanted his death to serve power. Nuck's final choice serves life. Immortan Joe's ending also works because it destroys the image before it destroys the empire. Joe's power depends on spectacle. The mask, the armor, the height of the citadel, the controlled water, the worship of the war boys. All of it creates the illusion that he is more than a man. He presents himself like a figure beyond weakness, but the film keeps showing that his power is artificial. It is built from machinery, fear, scarcity, and performance. When Furiosa defeats him, it is not just revenge, it is image collapse. The false god is revealed as mortal. The thing his followers feared and worshipped can be broken. And once that image is broken, the entire belief system becomes unstable. The ending at the Citadel is powerful because it brings the film's symbols together. Water, which Joe used as control, is released back to the people. The women who were hidden as possessions return in public as survivors. Furiosa, who once walked inside the war machine, rises upward as a liberating force. The crowd, once dependent and desperate below, sees that the source of their fear is gone. But the film does not pretend this fixes everything. This is important. The citadel is not suddenly paradise, the wasteland still exists. The damage remains. There will be questions of leadership, survival, justice, food, water, and rebuilding. But the ending is hopeful because the central lie has been broken. Joe made people believe there was no life outside his control. Furiosa proves that his control was not destiny. The hidden details make this even richer. The seeds carried by the Vivallini are one of the film's clearest symbols. They are small, almost fragile, but they represent the future in its purest form. Joe's world is obsessed with legacy through ownership and bloodline. The seeds represent another kind of legacy: growth, care, patience, and shared survival. One legacy consumes, the other cultivates. The steering wheel is another recurring image. In this world, control is literal. Who drives? Who decides direction? Who is cargo? Who is chained to the machine? Furiosa's grip on the worldly matters because she is directing the escape. Max taking the wheel at different points matters because trust is shifting. The wives moving from hidden cargo to active participants matters because they are no longer simply being transported toward freedom, they are helping make freedom possible. Masks also carry meaning everywhere. Max is masked when he is reduced to a resource. Joe wears his breathing apparatus as part necessity, part intimidation, part false divinity. Masks in this film often show how power hides damage or how prisoners are denied full personhood. When those masks are broken or removed, the film exposes the human truth underneath the system's performance. The War Boys' language and rituals are foreshadowing too. Their obsession with glory shows how Joe has colonized their imagination. He does not only control their bodies, he controls the story they tell themselves about their bodies. That is why Nox's change matters so much. He does not simply switch sides, he escapes a story. And there is no post-credits scene which actually fits the film perfectly. Fury Road does not need a teaser to push you into the next chapter. Its ending is already mythic. Max disappears, Furiosa rises, and the story closes on the feeling of a legend continuing beyond the frame. A post-credits hook would almost cheapen that. The film ends by letting the image breathe. My personal reaction to the ending is that it is more emotional than it first appears. On the first watch, you may remember the action, the vehicles, the final chase, and the intensity. But the ending lingers because Max does not take the throne and Furiosa does not receive a clean victory speech. They share a look. That is enough. In that look, there is recognition, respect, gratitude, a silent understanding that they carried each other through something neither could have survived alone. Then Max leaves, and that is right for him. He is not healed enough to stay, and the film does not force him into a role that belongs to Furiosa and the people of the Citadel. His gift is not rule, his gift is help. For a brief moment, he becomes part of another person's liberation, and that gives him back a piece of himself. The deeper meaning of the ending is simple, but it hits hard. Freedom is not found by chasing a perfect place. Freedom begins when people stop believing the cage is permanent. Furiosa spends the film looking for the green place. In the end, she starts creating one. So, where does Mad Max Fury Road finally land? For me, this is a 6.4 out of 10. And I know that may sound lower than the level of craft we have been praising throughout this breakdown, because on a technical level, this film is astonishing. The action direction is almost unreal in its control. The editing has muscle. The sound design feels alive. The production design is unforgettable. Furiosa is a phenomenal character. The world feels mythic, brutal, and fully imagined. As a piece of action filmmaking, Fury Road absolutely deserves its reputation. But the rating is not only about what a film achieves objectively, it is also about how completely it connects emotionally. And for me, that is where the film becomes slightly complicated. I admire Fury Road more than I personally love it. I respect the machine. I respect the vision. I respect the discipline. I respect how much storytelling George Miller packs into movement, image, sound, and design. But at the same time, the film's relentless momentum leaves me wanting a little more emotional breathing room. Not a slower movie, not a softer movie, just a few more moments where the characters could fully settle into the pain, fear, and hope that the film is already carrying beneath the surface. That is why 6.4 feels honest. This is not a weak film, not even close. It is a film with extraordinary strengths and a very specific kind of intensity, but that intensity may not work equally for everyone. Some people will experience it as pure cinematic oxygen. Others may feel like they are being dragged through the desert without enough pause to fully attach to everyone inside the story. You should absolutely watch this film if you love visual storytelling, if you love action that has geography, weight, rhythm, and meaning. If you are tired of blockbusters that explain everything but make you feel nothing, Fury Road is the opposite. It gives you images first and asks you to feel your way through them. It trusts your eyes. It trusts your instincts. It trusts cinema itself. You should also watch it if you care about world building. The citadel, the war boys, the war rig, the Vivalini, the masks, the rituals, the vehicles. Every part of this world feels designed with thought. You can pause almost any frame and find a story inside the details. And you should definitely watch it if you want to understand why Furiosa became such a defining modern action character. She is not powerful because the script tells you she is powerful. She is powerful because every choice she makes carries purpose. Every silence has pressure. Every moment of control feels earned. But you might not connect with this film if you need a traditional character drama. If you prefer long conversations, slower emotional development, and lady dialogue scenes, Fury Road may feel too stripped down. The film speaks in engines, glances, wounds, and speed. That is its beauty, but it is also its barrier. As for how to watch it, this is absolutely a big screen film first. If you ever get the chance to see it in cinema, that is the ideal way. The scale, sound, dust, and movement need space. But if cinema is not an option, watch it on the biggest screen you have, with strong sound and without distractions. This is not a film to half watch while checking your phone. The storytelling is too visual. Look away and you miss character. Would I own it? For action fans, yes. For casual viewers, streaming is enough. For film lovers studying action cinema, it is absolutely worth keeping because it is one of those movies that teaches you something new each time you revisit it. Final verdict: Mad Max Fury Road is not perfect, but it is alive in a way many modern action films are not. It is loud, strange, exhausting, beautiful, and fiercely controlled. It may not fully satisfy every emotional need, but as a cinematic engine, it is almost impossible to ignore. The road begins as survival, becomes rebellion, and ends with the possibility that even in a dead world, life can still fight its way back upward. Every film is a box, and we opened this one together. And that brings us to the end of this film box breakdown of Mad Max Fury Road. If you stayed with me all the way through this load of dust, fire, engines, trauma, freedom, and fury, thank you. Truly. This is the kind of film that looks simple from far away, but the closer you get, the more you realize how much is hidden inside the motion. That is why movies like this are worth opening carefully. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the Film Box, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next deep movie breakdown. It really helps the channel grow, and it tells me you want more cinematic reviews, story explanations, hidden details, and honest verdicts like this. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Mad Max Fury Road is one of the greatest action films ever made, or do you think its simple story and non-stop pace are slightly overrated? And more importantly, who do you think truly owns this film emotionally, Max or Furiosa? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those movies where every viewer seems to carry a different piece of the wasteland with them. Next time, we will open another film, look beneath the surface, and find the story hiding inside the spectacle. Every film is a box, and we've only just started opening them. That's the Film Box. See you in the next one.